She's a wonderful girl. She's sharp as a tack, wonderful southern belle, and sweet as can be, and very good for me.
She's quite something, you know. She's very special.
Johnny is a wonderful person to work with. He's just a true artist and is so wonderful to be around, and I'm very lucky.
Domestic abuse, also referred to as domestic violence or intimate partner violence, can be defined as a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. Abuse is physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats of actions that influence another person.
And from the first you enough times I was kidding. That's the difference between me and you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you start physical fights.
This includes any behaviors that frighten, intimidate, terrorize, manipulate, hurt, humiliate, injure, or wound someone. Domestic abuse can happen to anyone of any race, age, sexual orientation, religion, or gender. It can occur within a range of relationships, including couples who are married, living together, or dating.
Why did she have to happen? Just when I was doing so good without her.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Kijabo YouTube channel, a channel that is certainly no stranger to the film and movie industry, though this particular topic without a doubt extends far further than the scope of such a volatile scene, but nonetheless, one I feel compelled to cover due to the accolades of research and information that I have gathered, and thus concluded that the presentation of this case has been covered wholly inappropriately by the overwhelming majority of YouTubers, news outlets, and articles. So let's get to the basics of trial here. Previously having been accused of intimate partner violence by Amber Heard, in February of 2019, Johnny Depp sued his ex-wife over an op-ed of hers in the Washington Post, in which he described herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse, and described her current situation as seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. Depp blamed Heard's op-ed for the extensive financial losses to his career and claimed it damaged his ability to profit from his vocation. This is the event that started the John C. Depp II v. Amber Laura Heard case, which has recently come to a verdict. However, as you can imagine, there is far more to the story than this, and it's been rather annoying having to view the internet crowd ride the bandwagon of misinformation, as this particular case has been unbelievably bent and shaped by the internet to fit the narrative of Johnny Depp being a victim of false accusations and Amber Heard being a lying and manipulative ex-wife. However, as has become somewhat of a running theme on this channel, it's never this black and white. To explain and analyze the intricacies of this peculiar trial, it's necessary to rewind to the very beginning of the story, where the initial relationship was built.
Amber Heard is opening up for the first time about her marriage to Johnny Depp. The 29-year-old actress graces Elle magazine's July cover, and the famously private star is talking about her life since marrying the Hollywood A-lister, whom she met on the set of Rum Diary in 2010.
Starting in 2012 and leading to the marriage in 2015, Heard filed for both a divorce and a temporary restraining order in May of 2016. Heard testified about the alleged abuse at the deposition during their divorce litigation, alleging that Depp had been verbally and physically abusive throughout their relationship, usually while under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Depp, however, pledged that Heard was attempting to secure a premature financial resolution by alleging abuse. The divorce received much publicity, with images of Amber Heard's alleged injuries published by the media. A settlement was reached in August 2016 and the divorce was finalized in January 2017. Heard withdrew the restraining order and she and Depp released a joint statement stating that their relationship was intensely passionate and periodically volatile, but always bound by love. Neither party has made false accusations for financial gain. There was never any intent of physical or emotional harm. Depp paid Heard a settlement of $7 million, which he pledged to donate to the American Civil Liberties Union and the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. The settlement also included a non-disclosure agreement, preventing either party from discussing their relationship publicly. At the core of this defamation dispute is a classic case of domestic abuse. The two biggest differences between this and every other case is the involvement of celebrityhood and that it was streamed so publicly. It's important to understand the dynamics of intimate partner violence and coercive control. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I believe the verdict of this case was not horrifically unjust, and that the horrible things Amber said and did may outweigh the misdemeanors of Johnny Depp. Despite Amber Heard's liability in this case, however, the relationship was always webbed by the trappings of an abusive environment. To display what I'm referring to, I'd first like to cover the difference in power dynamics. At the start of the relationship, Depp was roughly double Heard's age. It also goes without saying that Depp is far more successful than Heard. Far more successful. He's essentially a household name, and the fact of the matter is most people had never heard of Amber Heard until she started dating famous men. And even then, she remained relatively obscure until this case became so popular. In terms of violent behavioral histories, people are quick to point out the previous case of Amber Heard's alleged assault against her ex-wife Tasya Van Ree. The people who use this argument, with all due respect, probably only read the titles of articles, because the story goes like this. As stated by the alleged victim, that two homophobic individuals in power positions wrongfully accused Amber Heard of violence towards her wife at an airport. She was indeed arrested, but then immediately released after clarifications, and Tasya remains on good terms with Heard, even acting as a witness in the recent case. Additionally, if you're going to use previous displays of violent behaviour as evidence, it seems wildly hypocritical to ignore Johnny Depp's arrest in 1989 for assaulting a security guard who was dealing with noise complaints at a party that Depp was holding, as well as Johnny Depp's arrest in 1999 for threatening a paparazzi photographer, as well as his arrest in 1994 for wrecking a hotel room with his at-the-time girlfriend Kate Moss, whose safety authorities were worried about. And if those aren't recent enough for you, Johnny Depp is also currently being sued for punching a crew member of the film City of Lies in a drunken tirade. Or what about when Depp's ex-wife in 1983, Laurie Ann Allison, was paid over $1 million to keep quiet after Depp allegedly left a long ranting message in which he repeatedly used the N-word, or another ex, Jennifer Ray's recent memoir, that Johnny was always getting in trouble and skirmishes with the cops, and fighting in bars, then displaying extremely jealous tendencies among his return home. There's also Ellen Barkin, yet another ex in 1994 who testified in the UK libel case, which we will get to, that Johnny Depp had previously thrown a wine bottle on her head, and was also quoted saying, "He is just a controlling, jealous man." And there was always an air of violence around him. There was just this world of violence.
Mr. Depp threw a wine bottle across the room, the hotel room on one instance in Las Vegas while we were shooting Fear and Loathing. A fight was going on between Johnny Depp and his friends in the room, the assistant. Honestly, I don't remember.
How did it come about that Mr. Depp broke off your relationship?
I went to go home. There was a big goodbye, crying, a lot of jealous, don't do this, don't do that. And I never heard from him again after that.
And you just referenced, you just used the word jealous. How did that come up? What did he say that indicated to you that he was jealous?
He's just a jealous man, controlling. Where are you going? Who are you going with? What did you do last night? I had a scratch on my back once that got him very, very angry because he insisted it came from me having sex with a person who wasn't him.
Was it common for him to say things to you about being controlling, to use your words, or being jealous?
Yeah, very common.
And when, in these instances, when Mr. Depp became jealous or controlling, did he also become angry?
Yeah, and demanding.
Vanessa Paradis, Depp's longest-lasting relationship, ending in 2012, spoke in an interview about how Depp would regularly explode and smash plates on the wall. She received $150 million in a split settlement and has kept quiet since then, however. Now, I am aware that many of these are older incidents, and it's probable that Depp has grown since many of these events, but I'm simply making the argument that you can't use Amber's singular case against her and ignore all of Depp's. It's also important to note that Depp has never convincingly been accused of laying his hands on another woman aggressively or violently, but it is definitely not beyond belief that he was extremely unpleasant and potentially abusive when he was with Amber, particularly when he wasn't in a state of sobriety. Keep in mind that abuse need not always be physical strikes from one person to another. Destructive raging, wrecking rooms, and throwing objects undeniably creates a volatile and abusive environment. It's consistent among every relationship that Johnny has ever had that when he is under the influence he is a complete complete demon to be around. That much can be absolutely proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The first bit of legal trouble Depp found himself in, following the collapse of his relationship with Amber, is the briefly aforementioned UK libel case. After the seemingly peaceful resolution of the divorce settlement with the mutual settlement being made, Depp's attorney made it clear that they intended to and pleaded with the world to leave this marriage behind them and move forward. And whilst the states followed this as the two parties continued to pursue their acting careers, the British tabloids wouldn't extend this courtesy, and The Sun released an article regarding Depp's appearance in J.K. Rowling's Fantastic Beasts. Gone potty. How can J.K. Rowling be genuinely happy casting wife-beater Johnny Depp in the new Fantastic Beasts film? In this April 2018 Sun-published article, Rowling was accused of granting Depp total rehabilitation in the eyes of the movie industry, despite overwhelming evidence suggesting his recent domestic abuse allegations. Depp's reaction to this was very swift, and on the 1st of June that same year, Johnny Depp sued The Sun, which is a sentence that sounds a lot cooler without context. He demanded a minimum of $200,000 plus legal fees via a civil case. His attorneys added that the highlighted wife-beater is a career-destroying description that has and will continue to cause Depp serious harm and loss in revenue, which is the threshold standard for defamation in England. The Sun's defense claimed that there was sufficient enough evidence to allow the provocative title, and used 14 alleged incidents of domestic abuse against Heard between 2013 and 2016 as evidence. Though neither Heard or Depp were directly on trial, this UK case can essentially be seen as a pilot trial for the recently ended Virginia case, as both parties did give witness testimonies. Depp referred to the monster in reference to himself whilst admitting his undesirable state under the influence, but continued to pledge that Amber was fabricating her claims of domestic abuse, evidencing previous partners' descriptions of him as a non-violent person, especially with a woman. And he goes on to shift blame onto Amber Heard, alleging that she was the abuser in the relationship, accusing her of repeatedly belittling him and commonly turning physically violent.
Miss Heard had come at me with her nails, her hand scratching at me.
Depp testified that events such as an alleged headbutting incident was actually an accidental clash of heads in the midst of Depp actually attempting to stop Heard from striking him. Depp also detailed an incident of Amber Heard throwing a bottle of vodka at him and missing, and then hitting him on the head with a second bottle due to her seeing him drinking for the first time in a while.
She squared off at me in the doorway of our bedroom, and I said, what do you want to do, hit me again? Would you like to hit me again? And I said, go ahead, hit me. Bam.
As well as severing his fingertip, leading to permanent damage.
I didn't feel the pain at first at all. I felt no pain whatsoever. What I felt was, I felt heat. I felt heat, and I felt as if something were dripping down my hand, you know. And then I looked down and realized that the tip of my finger had been severed.
Photos reported by Depp's counsel purportedly showed picture evidence of Depp with a bloody finger and a cigarette burn on his face. Heard denied injuring Depp, contending that her ex had damaged his own finger. Whilst Johnny did acknowledge recalling taking responsibility for the severed finger, he claimed that this was purely to protect Heard as it prevented him from working on set. A lot of audio recordings have been used against Heard, and we will get to those, but some can absolutely be used against Johnny too, because this clip exists.
I'm talking about Australia, the day that
now we're talking about Australia. Okay. Yes.
You hear that? When you said the day I chopped my finger off? Let's play it again.
That'd be great, thank you.
Fight you're talking about. I don't know.
I'm talking about Australia, the day that
now we're talking about
finger.
Australia. Okay.
Are you sure that's
Yeah, let's do it one more time.
what
You
I'm
actually
saying?
don't.
Or is it the day that I got my finger chopped off?
No, you say the day that I chopped my finger off. So let's play it one more time, because I think I left out the word that. It says the day that I chopped my finger off.
Fight you're talking about? I don't know.
I'm talking about Australia, the day that I
Now we're
shot
talking
my
about
finger off.
Australia. Okay.
I'm not so sure.
Suspicious for sure. At a reach, you could say that he chopped one of his fingers and Heard had severed another one, because realistically that's the only way Depp could be telling the truth, but he was most likely lying here. So now it gets a little stranger, to say the least. It's around this point in court where Depp details an incident in which Heard was furious at Depp for arriving late to her 30th birthday party due to a meeting he had to attend. Heard purportedly struck Depp in the face multiple times after the party ended, provoking him to move to another home for the night, planning to return in the morning to retrieve some items after Heard left for Coachella, but was advised not to return because Amber Heard shat all over the bed. This was reportedly an incident that alerted Depp that this was indeed the end of the relationship, and in accordance with this premonition, Heard filed for divorce a month later. Heard, of course, denied playing any role in this defecation situation, claiming it was all made up to, quote, embarrass her.
It was a photograph of the bed, our bed, and on my side of the bed was human fecal matter.
The English court came to a verdict and the Sun had won, and Johnny Depp had lost this libel case. This was because the court did not accept Depp's claim that Heard was not a reliable witness. In terms of the 14 allegations, it was concluded that assaults were proven to a civil standard for 12 of these, meaning that 12 of the 14 alleged incidents are more likely to have gone down how Amber Heard claimed them to have gone down, with only incidents 6 and 11 remaining unproven. Depp attempted to appeal the judgment, but was denied. The verdict was final, and whilst some think that the verdict was unjust, realistically, it absolutely wasn't. Depp totally and fairly lost this case. 2 other judges had even reviewed the case and confirmed that Johnny did not stand a chance if it were to have been redone. Before we move on, for what it's worth, it's extremely unlikely that Amber Heard shat the bed, and the judge for the case seems to agree with me. Given that Depp wasn't in the house at the time, and the only person the supposed revenge plot would actually harm is Heard herself, the judge blamed it on the dog. I'll leave this one up to you it's not a hugely important part of any trial, really. It's just so outlandish that it had to be mentioned. Amongst Depp's legal team's claim that Heard was an unreliable witness was the claim that she hadn't paid the promised $7 million settlement from the divorce litigation to the charity she pledged to. And this is where things get interesting, because in many ways, this marks the beginning of the end for Amber Heard. It's important to note that the standard for proof in defamation in UK court systems is significantly lower than that of the US, as in the UK the defendant simply needs to prove that they are telling the truth, whereas in the US, the plaintiff must prove the statements made against them are false. Despite these built-in advantages, however, Depp still lost twice in the English courtroom. So not only have British courts acknowledged Amber's allegations to be true, but additionally, Depp's attempts to cover up the abuse allegations have had the unintended Streisand effect of amplifying and popularizing these allegations, leading many to characterize his legal team and strategy as a total flop. Oh, how the tables are about to turn. Upon Depp's loss, Warner Brothers requested a resignation, forcing Depp to leave the Fantastic Beasts franchise, and Depp supporters continue to pledge that the UK case was unfair and that new evidence has come out since then. The most important of which being multitudes of new audio clips that allegedly contain Amber Heard admitting to being abusive in the midst of their marriage. So here we are, back on American soil with a vengeful team behind Depp who are now aiming to take another bite of the defamation apple, in hopes that this time, Depp will justly be vindicated, and that the English negligence will be made up for, and that the op-ed Amber Heard released in the Washington Post that I mentioned at the start of this video was the perfect opportunity to sue. So let's discuss. It was titled, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. In the article, Heard stated, quote, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. I had the rare vintage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. Whilst Depp isn't mentioned in the op-ed by name, the party alleging defamation need not necessarily be named if there are enough identifying factors in reference to the plaintiff. That would realistically lead to a reader coming to that conclusion, which evidently there were. The Depp vs. Heard litigation is instigated by Johnny filing a $50 million defamation lawsuit in 2019. This used Heard's article as evidence for, quote, categorically and demonstrably false claims of domestic abuse, claiming, quote, the op-ed depended on the central premise that Miss Heard was a domestic abuse victim and that Mr. Depp perpetrated domestic violence against her. Depp's lawyers added on to this by claiming the op-ed was made under false pretenses as an elaborate hoax to further Heard's career and generate positive publicity. Much like the previous lawsuit, this one was made under the condition that Heard's op-ed had incalculably damaged the actor's reputation, and derailed his career in this case, highlighting how Depp was fired from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise 4 days after the article was published. The situation escalates to a very heavy scale in August of 2020. Heard countersued for $100 million, arguing that by denying the allegations, Depp was essentially accusing Heard of perjury, the offense of willfully telling an untruth or making a misrepresentation under oath, in this case to have obtained the restraining order way back when, effectively defaming her character, as well as accusations of a Depp-coordinated smear campaign on Twitter in an effort to get her fired from Aquaman and The Real, which violated internet harassment laws in Virginia. Originally, Amber Heard's team wanted to use the rule of claim and issue preclusion to cool off the lawsuit. This is a principle of law that prevents relitigation of the same cause of action once there has been a final judgment in any setting. The issue Heard's lawyers found, however, was an order for claim preclusion, otherwise known as res judicata, to hold any bearing in a court of law. It must be a repeat of the same plaintiff and defendant, the same two parties. Now the problem here lies in the fact that in the English lawsuit, Amber Heard, despite her consistent and important involvement, was only ever a very influential witness for the defense, rather than the actual defense itself, and as a result the judge disregarded the attempt of scrapping the case. Furthermore, the American legal system has a habit and a reason to reject foreign judgments that fail to live up to American standards of free speech, meaning that even if Depp had won the lawsuit against the Sun and requested any court in the US to recognize the judgment, this would have failed just as spectacularly as his appeal did. In April 2020, the Daily Mail published an article containing several allegations by Depp's lawyer, Adam Waldman. First, Waldman stated that Amber Heard and her friends in the media used fake sexual violence allegations as both sword and shield, depending on their needs. They have selected some of her sexual violence hoax facts as the sword, inflicting them on the public and Mr. Depp. Secondly, Waldman stated that regarding a 2016 incident in Depp and Heard's Hollywood penthouse, quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempt didn't do the trick. The officers came to the penthouse, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property. So Amber and her friends spilled a little wine and roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911. Thirdly, Waldman stated, we have reached the beginning of the end of Miss Heard's abuse hoax against Johnny Depp. It didn't take long for the trial's judge to ban Waldman from representing Depp in the trial as he had leaked confidential information, but given how great Camille Vasquez ended up being, this was probably a blessing in disguise. Finally, we've reached the first day of trial. The 11th of April, 2022, Fairfax County, Virginia, United States of America. Opening statements occurred, and so began the first legal accusation of staging an injury, as Depp's lawyer Benjamin Chu discussed Heard's appearing in public with a bruised face on May 27, 2016, citing that Depp had not met her since May 21st of 2016, and witnesses did not see her with the injury immediately after May 21st of 2016.
Ms. Heard, the evidence will show that Ms. Heard showed up with a mark on her face that mysteriously appeared 6 days after she last saw Mr. Depp. And 6 days before, she publicly filed a request for a domestic violence restraining order alleging abuse. The evidence will show that her publicist and the paparazzi were there at the courthouse to document the event, to make sure that Johnny Depp's name was forever associated with the image of an innocent, battered woman. It was a jolt. It was a shocking story, splashed across front pages across the country. No one had ever, in 5 decades, accused Johnny Depp of being violent with a woman. No one had ever accused Mr. Depp of being violent with a woman. He had been in other long-term relationships. He had children.
Heard's lawyer, Irene Brederhoft, argued that the First Amendment protects Heard's right to make the claims that she did in the op-ed. A weak argument to say the least, as if this held any truth or weight, the majority of defamation cases could effectively be tossed in the bin. Instead, Heard's team argued that Depp's ruined career was a result of his unreliability, stemming from his drinking and drug use, using the fact that allegations have been made public for years as evidence. Now onto the bulk of the court case itself. Obviously, I'm not going to explain every intricacy of every 8-hour day of trial, but it is absolutely something that needs to be discussed generally, especially considering that a huge problem with this case's depiction on the internet is the total lack of legal knowledge displayed by those commenting on the dispute. It speaks volumes of the internet's ignorance when words like guilty and prison were being thrown around so often. First and foremost, this is a civil case, not a criminal case. In fact, all lawsuits are civil disputes. What this means is that there was never any risk of either party going to jail, and Amber Heard is neither guilty nor not guilty. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, we need to acknowledge that despite the internet creating an illusion of clear and assured victory for Johnny throughout the case, it was almost certain that the verdict would side in favour of Heard, and it probably would have gone that way if it wasn't for one primary reason. That reason being the sheer incompetence of Heard's team and the efficiency of Depp's. It's important to note that the judge had effectively ruled that Johnny Depp had never abused Amber Heard at any point, as all that had to be done was a presentation of valid proof of one case of abuse, and this is even acknowledged by Heard's lawyer himself.
They're trying to trick you into thinking that Amber has to be perfect in order to win, even while they're ignoring Mr. Depp's many flaws. But don't fall for that trick. Amber's not perfect. None of us are. She's never pretended to be, and that's not what you're being asked to decide. One time, ladies and gentlemen, one time. If he abused her one time, Amber wins.
Now, if we are to take this as true, then this is a very dodgy case that absolutely did not go down how it should have gone. Because let me make this very clear, and everything I say from this point forward, unless stated otherwise, is a fact. Because when analysing incidents like these ones, all someone like me can really do is pick specific aspects that have been and can be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. Starting with this. Johnny Depp absolutely abused Amber Heard. Let's quickly go through what was proven as a fact in the UK case. And for those who claim that this isn't definitive proof, respectfully, there's far more evidence for these incidents than against them. And that's exactly why Depp lost his litigation case in England, where it should have been way easier for him to win. So taking that into consideration, I will now read what Depp has more likely than not done. In early 2013, Depp, under the influence of alcohol and drugs, hit and shoved Heard on at least 2 occasions at her home. In June 2013, during a weekend trip, an inebriated Depp had an altercation with a woman whom he thought had made a sexual advance towards Heard, who had previously been in a relationship with a woman. After this, Depp and Heard returned to their rented trailer where he threw glass at Heard and ripped her dress, as well as caused extensive damage to the trailer. Heard also made further claims which were heard in a closed court due to their nature and have not been publicly disclosed. In May 2014, an inebriated Depp verbally insulted, threw objects at and kicked Heard during a private plane flight. In August 2014, Depp shoved and hit Heard during his detox from opioids on his private island in the Bahamas. In January 2015, at a hotel in Tokyo, an intoxicated Depp hit Heard, grabbed her by the hair and shoved her to the floor, not allowing her to get back up. In March 2015, Depp caused Heard injuries including a broken lip, swollen nose and cuts all over her body, and damaged a rented house they were staying in while he was filming the 5th installment of the Pirates of the Caribbean in Australia. The incident took place over 3 days, during which Depp was high on drugs and accidentally severed one of his fingers. He then used the stub to write insults about Heard to the house's walls. Heard also stated that he put out a burning cigarette on his own cheek. Heard also made further claims which were heard in a closed court due to their nature and have not been publicly disclosed. In March 2015, at their Los Angeles home, Depp began to destroy Heard's possessions and hit her. When Heard's sister, Whitney Henriquez, intervened, Depp tried to attack her, which led Heard to hit him. In July 2015, Depp hit, pushed and choked Heard during a train trip in Southeast Asia. In December 2015, Depp assaulted Heard by hitting, shoving, headbutting, dragging her around their apartment by their hair, suffocating her with a pillow, and threatening to kill her. The next day, Heard was to appear in The Late Late Show with James Corden. In April 2016, an inebriated Depp threw objects at Heard and pushed her in the LA apartment. In May 2016 at the LA apartment, an inebriated Depp hit Heard, threw her phone at her face and dragged her by her hair, as well as broke items. Their neighbors and friends Elizabeth Mars, Raquel Pennington and Joshua Drew were present next door and intervened, with Tillett Wright, who had been on the phone with her during the incident, calling 911. I completely understand if someone as a Depp defender would deem it appropriate to deny the reality of these claims, and I don't have a problem with it either, as in an English civil case, these incidents don't need to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, but only be more likely than unlikely. So they aren't facts by any means. However, to make the allegation that none of these have any accuracy behind them is 10 steps too far, and you're full of it. Johnny Depp domestically abused Amber Heard, and that's that. Now that being said, let's make another thing clear. Amber Heard absolutely abused Johnny Depp, and a majority of this evidence can be seen via the newfound voice recordings that were released periodically in between the English and American cases, of which I will now play a few.
Okay. So let's say that was an accident. I then stood up. I don't even know if I said, I mean, I might have said, like, what the f***, what, you know, whatever, because I'd just been hit in the head with the corner of a door.
I'm so sorry, I did not. I'm sorry.
And then I stood up, and then you blocked me.
I remember hitting you as a response to the door thing. And I'm really sorry about hitting you with the door, or hitting your head. I did not mean to, nor...
You didn't mean to hit me in the head with the door, but you meant to punch me in the jaw.
I meant to hit you, and I did not do this thing with the door. I do remember, I did mean to hit you.
So that you didn't mean?
The door? No, God, no, I didn't.
But punching me in the jaw.
I didn't. Okay, I'm sorry I hit you. I did mean to hit you, but it was in response. I just reacted in response to my foot. I just reacted, and I'm sorry. It's below me.
Your foot? That was why you punched me?
Yeah.
You can please tell people that it was a fair fight and see what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them, Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and
yes.
It's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
It doesn't matter if it's a fair fight.
Go do that.
I said no. Tell them what just happened.
And I lied.
And that you punched me in the fucking thing, and you in the face, and you said, "No, fucking, no, I didn't. What the fuck are you talking about?" And I watched you lie, and then I
didn't punch you.
And
by
then
the way, I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you, babe. You're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
You've been a lot of fights. Been around a long time. I know. Yeah,
no, when you fucking have a closed fist.
You didn't get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you.
You can't
I don't know
deck
what
me.
the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this?
How are your toes?
I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are.
Oh,
that's the difference
your
between me and
toes.
you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you start physical fights?
You're such a baby!
Because
Grow the fuck up,
Because you
Johnny.
start physical fights?
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did, so I had to get the fuck out. I'm not gonna be in a physical fucking altercation with you.
Then don't.
You fucking hit me last night, you fucking...
You can't run away every fight. You can't. It's easy. It's not brave. It's not strong.
I don't want to, because I don't want to fucking fight.
You run away every single fight. Want to make it easy on you, so you split. You don't fight for me. You don't fight when there's a problem. You don't...
True. I'm not the one who fucking throws fucking pots and
those are different.
whatever
That's
the
different.
fucking else at me.
That's different. Just because I've thrown pots and pans does not mean that you come and knock on the door. Just because there are vases does not mean that you come and knock on the door.
Really, I should just let you throw...
I'm not saying that. You're saying that. You're putting words in my mouth and then making non sequiturs.
I'm giving you a situation. Oh, man.
I'm not going to sit here and promise you I'll never get mad. What are you fucking talking about? I didn't fucking even have a fucking thing to lie about. What are you fucking talking about?
Did you just fucking... Did you punch me in the fucking jaw? Did you fucking kick... Did you?
You don't investigate
Stop
study.
with the attitude.
You're fucking full of shit. What lie?
Your ass off.
When? What conversation did I have with Travis? Big investigative study you've done. I'm not sitting here and fighting with you about the fight that we had last night.
After you fucking got physically violent with me, I texted Travis, I said, come up here, because I didn't want anything to happen.
I'm not gonna sit here and fight about fucking Toronto anymore. Guess what? I let it go. I'm not fucking talking about Toronto. I'm not fucking talking to nobody.
No,
Fuck that.
Well, then, you haven't gotten better about that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had 3 physical fights in the last month and a half, 2 months.
Sure.
If things get physical, we have to separate. There can be no physical violence.
I can't promise you that I'll be perfect. I can't promise you I won't get physical again. God, I fucking sometimes get so mad.
I'm not gonna be in a physical fucking altercation with you.
Then don't.
You fucking hit me last night. You fucking...
What about all the other times you split? Come on, you cannot act like that's about that. It's not.
Well, on a plane I can't split.
No, and you hit back, so don't act like you don't fucking participate.
I pushed you.
And you can sit here and call me names, but you get called a name, and what do? That's the last insult. You're a baby. You're a hypocrite. You don't do anything that you actually do. You expect from people what you can't give them.
Now, in terms of questioning who was more abusive in the context of this relationship, I don't know, and the reality is no one does other than the two of them. However, we can absolutely conclude that they were both abusive, which, to be fair, does line up with official intimate partner violence statistics, which state that 50% of domestic violence is reciprocal, 53% of non-reciprocal domestic violence is committed against men, and 71% of the instigators in non-reciprocal partner violence were women. And these statistics are from a 2001 national longitudinal study of adolescent health, which attempted to amass data about the health of a nationality representative sample of 14,322 individuals between the ages of 18 and 28. The study also asked subjects to answer questions about romantic or sexual relationships in which they had engaged during the previous 5 years and whether those relationships had involved violence. Make of this what you will, but the bottom line is, domestic abuse is often very reciprocal. The two, on top of abusing each other, also defamed each other. However, we will cover this aspect when we get to the topic of the verdict. On top of these facts of the actions of both parties, we can also gather through hindsight the biggest mistakes emerging from both legal teams, of which there are many from Heard. So, basic American law. The objection. Something that actually doesn't exist in UK courts. There is a science to pursuing objections in court, and being a trial lawyer who is responsible for calling these out is extremely difficult, heavily due to the very small time frame you have to react to testimony. And it's these complications that lead to notorious parts of this trial, such as this one.
You didn't know what could cause damage to Mr. Depp's hand while you were there on March 8th, correct?
Dr. Kipper told me he sustained an injury on one of his fingers.
Objection, hearsay.
Wait, you asked the question.
Okay.
Now, we need to bear in mind that this was an ultra-brief moment from days' worth of court footage, and whilst it's not the most efficient lawyering, these events are far from uncommon amongst the courtroom, and has only been highlighted due to the abnormalities of just how public the trial was.
The problem here is that he asked an ambiguous question that elicited a hearsay response. I mean, it's complicated, it might not be hearsay, that's a different issue. And it's not that he objected to his own question, it's that he objected to the testimony. What he should have done is made a motion to the court to strike the answer as hearsay. But effectively the judge is saying, you asked the question, it might not be hearsay, so you can live with the answer, and everyone is exasperated here.
Having viewed, frankly, far too many hours of this trial, it became clear that there were 5 objections being thrown around more so than any other. These being, in order of least to most common, objection argumentative, objection leading question, objection calls for speculation, objection relevance, and of course, objection hearsay. Now, the only other thing a trial lawyer can do other than object with interacting with a witness is question said witness. And Amber Heard's team sometimes fell into the cheap trap of phrasing an insult or argumentative claim in the structure of a question, which can be seen here, though it certainly bites them in the back soon enough.
Now, if you don't have information that's helpful to this case, then you wouldn't be a witness, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained. Sustained. Next question.
I'm not aware.
Okay, you know this case is being televised, right?
I am aware that there are cameras.
And so this gets you your 15 minutes of fame, doesn't
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
I can ask that question.
Oh, ruled.
So I stand to gain nothing from this. I'm actually putting myself kind of in a target of TMZ, a very litigious organization, and I'm not seeking any 15 minutes here. Though you're welcome to speculate. I could say the same thing by taking Amber Heard as a client for you.
A little argumentative, don't you think?
Oh, hardly. I find that to be purely logical.
Now I'm about to cover the most popular and arguably most damning piece of evidence on either side. However, before I do, I'd like to quickly outline the unforeseen hero of this court case, and a newfound internet hero, Camille Vasquez, who could be argued to have been the primary reason behind Depp's victory and the initiator of this damning evidence. So Vasquez has quite possibly benefited the most, certainly in terms of publicity when it comes to this trial, but most people are unaware that this is really nothing new for her. Somewhat unsurprisingly, the lawyer specializes in the fields of litigation and arbitration, particularly the representation of plaintiffs in defamation litigations. So in many ways, this trial was as natural as breathing for her. This is further evidenced by her backlog of lawyering for Hollywood celebrities such as Ben Affleck, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Jennifer Lopez. She is also set to represent Depp a second time in the physical assault case I mentioned earlier in this video. Following the trial, Vasquez was promoted from associate to partner at her firm, and so needless to say, the livestream flaunted her fine lawyering capabilities, and nowhere is this better seen than the cross-examination of Amber Heard on day 16 and 17 of the trial, which I will now detail its most important and telling moments. Whilst yes, there were so many other witness testimonies and psychological analysis in the courtroom, I will primarily be detailing the cross-examinations of both the plaintiff and the defendant, as I think we can all agree that these are the most telling of both the efficiency of their legal teams and the honesty of the parties. And also because if I was to deliberate even more so, this video would be about 10 times longer than it already is, which I'm sure nobody would want. Day 17's cross-examination begins viciously, with a direct line of questioning from Vasquez that questions the potential contradictions in Heard's actions and words, such as her choice to gift Depp a knife on his birthday, making little sense considering that according to her, by the time she had purchased the knife, the abuse had already begun, and Heard was fearful of her partner.
That's the knife you gave to the man who was hitting you, right, Miss Heard?
I wasn't worried he was going to stab me with it when I gave it to him, that's for certain.
But you gave it to him while he was abusing you, allegedly.
I gave it to him that year.
Moments such as this one were rife throughout the cross-examination.
And he testified that there was no wall-mounted phone smashed to smithereens that he had to replace, correct?
I didn't hear him testify to that, no.
He did. Your counsel elicited it.
I disagree with that representation.
And it's a great example of Heard shooting herself in the foot and reducing her level of credibility in the eyes of the jury. Camille also acknowledged that the phone Depp allegedly smashed leading to his severed finger is nowhere to be seen, even in the pictures that Heard herself took. Perhaps it was an unfortunate convenience, but when these coincidences become consistent enough to form something more akin to a pattern, it forces the public and the jury to put Amber's honesty into question. Amber Heard also chooses the unwise tactic of playing dumb at points.
So the writing in black paint is from Mr. Depp, correct?
It's all from Mr. Depp.
And it's your testimony under oath that you did not write the red text that says, quote, "Call Carly Simon, she said it better, babe," end quote.
That's correct.
Because if you did write that, it means that your husband was walking around the house bleeding from his amputated finger, and you're writing snarky messages to him on a mirror, right?
I don't know what your question to me is, I'm sorry.
So you heard Miss Lloyd testify, under oath, that Mr. Depp never threw a can of Red Bull at her.
I can't remember if she didn't recall that, or if she said it didn't happen. I don't remember. I vaguely sense she didn't recall anything.
So it's your testimony that Miss Lloyd would forget that Mr. Depp, a very famous patient of hers, threw a can of Red Bull that nearly missed her, according to your version of events?
From these clips, I'm sure it's becoming clearer and clearer why Amber Heard lost this case. She truly doesn't help herself. The final point before the break is the recollection of Amber Heard screaming at Depp for accidentally dropping some wine on her in front of Depp's children, which serves to evidence Heard's contribution to a potentially abusive environment, and Heard additionally seems reluctant to deny these allegations under oath.
And you're discussing what happened in the Bahamas in December of 2015, right?
No, that's not correct. We were discussing a part of it.
You're discussing when you screamed at Mr. Depp in front of his children, correct?
No, we were talking about a part of that argument.
Including when you screamed at Mr. Depp in front of his children.
That's not a fair characterization of what happened.
There's also an acknowledgement of verbal abuse during this cross.
You told Mr. Depp to suck your dick multiple times, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You tell him to go run to his 15 other houses, right?
That's correct. I called him horrible, ugly things, as you can hear.
Sell out.
We spoke to each other in a really horrible way.
Pretty sure We just heard you speak to him in a really horrible way. You called him a sellout,
I just
right, Miss
disagree.
Heard? You called him a sellout, right, Miss Heard?
I called him a lot of ugly things.
And a joke.
I called him a lot of ugly things.
You called him a joke on that recording. You called him a washed-up piece of shit.
I think we both called each other that on that occasion, yes. I was
Right.
trying to stop him from turning into the monster. The drugs are the key that opened the door.
Who was the real monster in this relationship, Miss Heard?
Lives in Johnny, half of Johnny. It's not all of Johnny. The other half of him is wonderful and beautiful and the man I love.
This right here is why Amber Heard and her team try so hard to exaggerate the extent to which Johnny Depp was involved with drugs and alcohol, because it is impossible to suggest that a sober Depp was anything but a gentle southern man, as detailed so delicately and credibly by his previous partners. Amber Heard is also exposed for faking injuries, most notably false claims of Depp breaking her nose, hitting her so hard whilst allegedly wearing big chunky rings on each finger. However, photo evidence of Heard at the Met Gala the next day display no such injury.
Your nose doesn't appear to be injured in any of these pictures, does it, Miss Heard?
That's why I'm wearing makeup.
Right. And makeup covers up swelling, right?
Makeup will not cover up swelling. Ice will, though. Ice reduces swelling. Normally, the swelling after that kind of injury is not as bad as you might imagine, and for me, it wasn't that bad. I have a picture of it underneath the makeup. That's how I know how to reference it.
A picture you haven't produced or shown
did.
to this jury, right, Miss Heard?
I produced everything.
But you haven't shown it to this jury.
I would very much like to. It's not my job.
Now, unless Amber Heard is a supernatural being, this is quite obviously a lie. Inflammation starts within the first hour or two after an injury. It peaks between 1 and 3 days, but lasts at least a couple of weeks. This phase is when you will experience swelling and some heat around your injury. Whilst yes, ice does aid in reducing the swelling and accelerating the process of healing, to claim that the injury became unnoticeable mere hours after the event is ludicrous, as no matter how much ice was used, chances are the swelling won't have even peaked by that point, even if it is mild swelling. This claim is ridiculous, and needless to say, makeup is basically useless in covering up swelling. It's also quite the coincidence that whilst Amber Heard claims to have photos of her injury without any makeup on, this is a photo that was never admitted to the jury, or for evidence, meaning it most likely doesn't exist. Despite having been allegedly vaginally raped by Depp with a glass bottle causing her vagina to bleed, having received harsh cuts on both her hands, face and feet, and her aforementioned supposed broken nose, Heard at no point seeked medical attention because, quote, she didn't need to. And as a result, there are no medical records of these alleged incidents, and the one record that does exist from 2 days later doesn't document any physical injury.
You testified that you were also raped with a liquor bottle in Australia, right, Miss Heard?
Yes.
You testified you bled from your vagina as a result of that sexual assault. There aren't any medical records reflecting that you sought medical treatment for any of these injuries, are there?
I did not seek medical treatment after Australia, no.
Not for the rape?
No, I did not want to tell anyone.
Not for the cuts?
No.
Not for the injuries to your face?
I didn't need to.
Heard goes on to make this testimony that I fail to see how she thought she'd get away with.
So you did give these pictures to People magazine?
No, I gave these pictures actually to my lawyers and my representatives at the time.
So it's your testimony, Ms. Heard, that your lawyers and representatives gave these pictures of their client to People magazine in the middle of a contentious divorce?
I certainly did not personally give it, no.
Vasquez goes on to chastise and question Heard for allegedly attempting to embarrass Depp by taking unflattering images of him and sending them to her friends under a false pretense of needing support and worries for his health.
You seem to really like taking pictures of Mr. Depp while he's sleeping, don't you? This isn't a very flattering picture of Mr. Depp, is it?
No, it's not.
You wouldn't agree that this is, or you would agree with me that this is an embarrassing scene, right?
Yes, I think it's a part of getting help, is looking at it, seeing it.
But you sent this picture to one of your friends, didn't you?
I don't recall. Yes, I was asking for support. That's correct.
There's no question yet, Ms. Heard.
Vasquez then implies that Heard is guilty of fabricating a scenario in which Depp was snorting cocaine, and once again sending this allegedly staged photograph to the same friend.
Doesn't really look like anyone's been doing cocaine off that table, does it?
And uses Heard's lack of genuine images of a conscious Depp around drugs to invalidate the claim that he was as powerful a druggie as Heard made him out to be. She then goes on to initiate the biggest gotcha moment in the entire case. Camille Vasquez exposes Amber Heard as a confirmed liar to the whole world by proving that she has failed to donate a single penny of her divorce settlement to the charity she pledged them to.
Sitting here today, Ms. Heard, you still haven't donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity. Isn't that right?
Incorrect. I pledged the entirety of the settlement, $7 million to charity, and I intend to fulfill those obligations.
Ms. Heard, that's not my question. Please,
What was
try
your
to answer
question?
my question. Sitting here today, you have not donated the $7 million, donated, not pledged, donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity.
I use pledge and donation synonymous with one another.
But I don't. Ms. Heard, I don't use it synonymously.
That's how donations are paid.
Ms. Heard, respectfully, that's not my question. As of today, you have not paid $3.5 million of your own money to the ACLU. Yes or no?
I have not yet.
And as of today, you have not paid $3.5 million of your own money to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, correct?
I have not yet. Johnny sued me.
So as of today, you have not donated, paid $7 million of your divorce settlement to charity, right?
I have not been able to fulfill those obligations yet.
Amber Heard wanted to have her cake and eat it too. She wanted to both pocket all of the money in the divorce settlement, hence her insistence on Depp giving the entirety of the settlement to her own purse rather than the charities directly, and she also wanted the credit and good press that would come with donating said settlement. It's also important to mention that Heard suggested that the $7 million should be donated in full and under no circumstances dragged out over an unnecessary amount of time.
We would also insist that the full amount be paid immediately and not drawn out over many years. Anything less would be a transparent attempt by Johnny's counsel, Laura Wasser and Patty Glazer, to reduce their client's true payment by half under the guise of newfound concern for charities that he has never previously supported, end quote.
However, as I'm sure we all know, despite Heard receiving the entire settlement and making the claims that she had, quote, donated the entire $7 million, she hadn't. Benjamin Chew quickly even writes and hands Vasquez a note reminding her of the fact that Heard was always in possession of the money and chose not to donate it, which elicits a dismissive response from the witness.
You had all of the $7 million for 13 months before Mr. Depp sued you, and you chose not to pay it to the charities you pledged it to. Is that correct, Ms.
I
Heard?
disagree with your characterization of that.
Anybody, no matter whose side you favor in this case, has to give Camille Vasquez huge accolades. She's shattered Amber into a million pieces. People don't realize how extremely difficult it is to manage transcripts for witness impeachment purposes, especially in this case when you're talking tens of thousands of pages from previous hearings. Not to mention, they've had this trial transcript expedited and used for impeachment. It's just extraordinary and serves to remind us why lawyering is such a prestigious job. Now that we've covered Vasquez's cross, I feel like it would be appropriate to detail Benjamin Rottenborn's cross-examination of Johnny C. Depp. Ben Rottenborn is not to be confused with Ben Chew, who was Depp's attorney, who was said to be far more cutthroat whilst Rottenborn was a little less fazed by the drama. I'll begin by pointing out some clear double standards when it comes to public perception.
Some things can be brought up, some things cannot be
Your Honor,
brought up,
said it calls
Mr.
for a legal
Rottenborn.
conclusion. He's talking about limitations in evidence in English.
Your Honor, he's talking about his experience testifying. Overruled.
You'll be okay.
Mr. Depp makes provocative comments such as this one throughout the trial and is praised by the general public. However, there is not a doubt in my mind that if Heard were to speak to Vasquez in this type of manner, it would serve as yet another piece of evidence for her guilt and attitude. It's wholly unprofessional, and whilst it's not a huge deal, it's definitely worth mentioning that neither of the two are perfect witnesses. Depp also makes some questionable claims within the litigation regarding her reputation as a polite southern gentleman. When he is confronted with text sent from his iPhone, he rebukes with this:
Molly's pussy is rightfully mine. Should I not just bust in and remove its hinges tonight? I want to change her understanding of what it is like to be thrashed about like a pleading mackerel And then in all caps you write, I need, I want, I take. Is that right?
You read it right. But I did not write that. Perhaps someone else.
You wrote
had
every
my
other
phone.
text that you produced that came from you in this litigation, didn't you?
Not necessarily. Sometimes you give your phone to people and they
Now,
text
when you
from
got
it.
off that plane from Boston,
Now, I don't know about you, but this sounds like an awfully infantile excuse. Johnny Depp is a 60-year-old man, not a teenager getting denied by their crush via text. Using the "oh sorry, that was my mate" excuse seems terribly convenient. Perhaps the most notable aspect of Depp's cross is the confrontation with the now notorious video of Depp destroying a kitchen and yelling obscenities. And whilst it is noted that not a finger was laid on Heard, we've already established that the procuring of an abusive environment can also contribute as evidence for Heard's case.
Paul Bettany's a good friend that you've done drugs with, right?
That's a strange question. Paul Bettany is a good friend. Yes.
You've done drugs with him?
Yes, I have.
Cocaine, right?
Cocaine, yes.
Alcohol?
Alcohol, yes.
Pills, including Xanax and Adderall, right?
That I'm not so sure of.
Moments like these are one of the many reasons why Depp came out on top in the eyes of the jury. Whilst both he and Amber probably committed a couple lies under oath, aka perjury, it is ultimately Depp that displays a brutal honesty at points that is never seen by Miss Heard. Ben Rottenborn, contrary to popular belief, actually does a fantastic job cross-examining Depp, and Johnny exhibits many of the misdemeanors that Amber Heard did just days prior. However, the remainder of Amber's legal team unfortunately pales in comparison, and so it's always their behaviour that is highlighted by both the press, the public, and the jury. It certainly doesn't help that Heard's constant glances at the jury, even when giving one-word answers, is blatant pandering and extremely off-putting.
Again, I don't know because I'm looking at a partial picture of a floor, so unless you remove the metadata you've covered up, we could then tell. If you
I didn't cover it up, Your Honor.
Could we unredact
Your Honor
them so we could get context?
That's how it's in evidence.
That's how it's in evidence.
Next question.
Well, the metadata next to it is so that
Ms.
to
Heard,
avoid this
Ms.
sort of
Heard,
confusion.
there is no question pending, and I would appreciate it if you wouldn't be making argument to the jury.
Sorry, I
It's
thought you had
inappropriate.
asked me about it.
No, I didn't ask you about anything.
Look, there's hundreds of hours of footage of this case, and I'm of the belief that it should have never been made public as it was. All the lack of privacy regarding this litigation does is skyrocket the popularity to such a dangerous extent. And by this I mean that every mistake, every misdemeanor, every instance of Amber Heard being a genuine victim will be absolutely ridiculed by the internet. We've already established that Depp is nowhere near as innocent as many believe him to be. In a situation such as this, where the opinions of the judge and jury ultimately decide the fate of both parties, televising the litigation has literally zero benefits. So thank God that this was a civil suit and not a criminal case where the threat of prison is actually imminent. Cross-examinations of the plaintiff and defense aside, I'll now cover some more of what I consider to be pivotal moments in this trial before I move on to the post-trial discussion. Don't worry, I'll try to be quick. We'll start these extras with the clinical diagnosis of both parties as forensic psychologists. Forensic psychologist Dr. Hughes, assigned to the defendant's team, spent 29 hours with Mrs. Heard. She said that Mrs. Heard reported to her that Mr. Depp had pushed, shoved, slapped, and choked her, adding that she also claimed that he slammed her into a wall and kicked her. Additionally, she presented a diagnosis of PTSD in regards to Amber Heard as a result of the relationship. On the plaintiff's side, Shannon Curry diagnosed borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder, and that was after 12 hours with Amber Heard. Strangely, there was a confusing lack of assessment for Depp's mental health, which in my opinion is totally unfair, as the jury's assessment of Amber will now be partly dependent on whose diagnosis they choose to believe. Heard accuses Depp of forcefully conducting a body search on her upon suspicion of stealing his cocaine.
Proceeds to do a cavity search? He said he was looking for his drugs, his cocaine, his coke. I was wondering how somebody who didn't do cocaine and was against it, that was in and of itself causing problems in our relationship. How could I hide? Why would I hide his drugs from, like he was insinuating that I was doing it or something? It made no sense. Just shoved his fingers inside me.
Johnny Depp's older sister testified that parallels could be drawn between Heard's relationship and their relationship with their abusive mother, who instilled within Johnny a tendency to hide when he felt threatened. On the contrary, Amber Heard's younger sister testified that she witnessed many of the physical altercations that occurred between the two supposed lovers, some of which even brought her, an outsider, into the kerfuffle. Johnny Depp's bodyguard, Mr. McGivern, comes forward as a witness at one point, testifying that Heard threw a Red Bull, spat at, and punched Mr. Depp.
And at some point I witnessed Miss Heard throw a Red Bull can.
There's almost an entire subplot to the conflict where Depp's potentially jealous boy personality shines through, admitting under oath to having suspected Heard to have had an affair with James Franco. Whilst Franco obviously didn't testify, we did get some strange elevator footage of the two a day before Heard filed for divorce. Now of course, there's a lot more to this case, and I truly could go on for countless hours, but I think we'll stop there. In the closing statements, it was stressed by Depp's legal team the importance of the "you're either with us or against us" mentality. From their point of view, there is no middle ground. You either believe everything that Amber Heard says, or none of it. It's either Mr. Depp assaulted and raped Mrs. Heard with a bottle in Australia, or Mrs. Heard got up on that stand in front of all of them and made up that horrific tale of abuse.
Ms. Heard lied to you twice when she suggested to you that Mr. Depp pushed Kate Moss down the stairs. You told her, you heard her say just 2 days ago that Mr. Depp never did that, and he never hit her, and he never kicked her. That was one of...
Objection, Your Honor. That's not what she testified to.
It's exactly
we
what
just
she
discussed
testified.
that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Benjamin Rottenborn, the same man who we previously covered the cross of, once again informed the jury of the seemingly vital aforementioned point that in order for Heard to win this litigation, evidence would need to exist that Depp abused Amber only or at least one time.
They're trying to trick you into thinking that Amber has to be perfect in order to win, even while they're ignoring Mr. Depp's many flaws. But don't fall for that trick. Amber's not perfect. None of us are. She's never pretended to be, and that's not what you're being asked to decide. One time, ladies and gentlemen, one time. If he abused her one time, Amber wins.
Notice the interesting juxtaposition here. The antithesis of Depp's team's conclusion is totally void of a middle ground, whereas Heard's team's conclusion is almost dependent on it. Whilst the lack of flexibility from Depp's team tends to not go down successfully in social settings, the tactic Rottenborn uses is also questionable because it also implies and admits by omission that Amber Heard absolutely was lying under oath at points. However, that this shouldn't matter as she only had to be telling the truth one time. After closing arguments were made by both Heard's and Depp's legal team, jury instructions were agreed upon. Judge Penny Ascure instructed that the jury must find all of the following to determine that Mrs. Heard was liable for defamation for each statement in question, and must find similarly regarding the statements made by Mr. Depp. Mrs. Heard made or published the statement. The statement was about Mr. Depp. The statement is false. The statement has a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp. The defamatory implication was designed and intended by Mrs. Heard due to circumstances surrounding the publication of the statement. It conveyed a defamatory implication to someone who saw it other than Mr. Depp, and as proven by clear and convincing evidence that Mrs. Heard made the statement with actual malice, i.e. with knowledge that her allegations were false, or so recklessly as to amount to a willful disregard for the truth. Jury deliberations began at around 3 p.m. on May 27th. They closed deliberations for the day around 5 p.m., resuming on May the 31st, after Memorial Day weekend. Deliberations concluded on June the 1st. The verdict was set to be announced at 3 p.m, but there were delays due to the jurors not filing out the damages section on the verdict. On June the 1st, 2022, the jury found that, for all three statements from Heard's 2018's op-ed, Mr. Depp had proven all the elements of defamation that they were false, defaming Depp with actual malice. The jury awarded Depp $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages from Heard. The punitive damages, however, were reduced to $350,000 due to a limit imposed by Virginia state law. Now, I'd like to remind you that upon the opening of this litigation, it was predicted by the overwhelming majority of legal experts that Depp's chances of success were even lower than that of the UK libel case, mainly due to the US places far stronger protection of free speech laws. It forces me to put into question just how reliable these jurors were. In high-profile criminal cases, juries are sequestered in order to prevent contact with the outside world, including supervision from workers in nearby hotels, for example. This trial, as a civil case, however, consisted of an ultimately unsequestered jury, and I find it difficult to believe that they were totally loyal to the judge's instruction of avoiding online access coverage of this litigation. This would certainly help to explain Depp's majority victory. I just don't think that broadcasting this trial was even a slightly wise move, and it did literally no good for anyone. It's essentially an invitation for the proceedings to be deliberately, even gleefully tailored to a viewer's whim, with internet platforms like TikTok being practically built to manipulate raw visual materials in the service of a personality cult, harassment campaign, or branding opportunity via the extremely short form and duration of the content. Now, I'm obviously not about to label all Heard's haters as misogynists. I mean, heck, I'm certainly not fond of her myself. I think she's pretty awful and fundamentally dislikable. But that aside, there's definitely a lot of misogynists foaming at the mouth when given the opportunity to shit on such a high-profile woman and face little to no backlash. And the issue is that lots of people who don't bother doing any fucking research have happily accepted these borderline propagandistic ideas against Heard as a sacrosanct. The two are incredibly affluent. The monetary punishment is no more than an inconvenience for both of them. The main victory for Depp is success in the court of public opinion, and that's that. Should that be the case? To be totally honest, I don't know. The only people who know how true these stories are, once again, are Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. My main motivation for making this video is to compel you to just think a little more deeply about this case. It's never black and white. The two are victims of each other. The two abused each other, and that much I can say confidently. I just don't know who abused who worse. Amber Heard undoubtedly handled herself stupidly and horrifically in this trial, and I'm sure that her blatant manipulative behavior and exposure and lies also contributed to her defeat. She did a lot of tearless crying, and she often appeared to be performing her sorrow rather than reliving it. Depp was a far better and more charismatic witness than Heard, the likability of which helps to humanize him, which any lawyer knows is pretty vital in terms of appealing to the jury, something Heard attempted but completely failed to do. And all of this brings us to now, where there are talks of an appeal on the horizon from Mrs. Heard. Pretty predictably, Amber Heard is being absolutely ridiculed for this appeal, and whilst I certainly don't think Amber Heard is honest or earnest, the internet might need to eat its words at some point, because the chances of this appeal's failure are nowhere near as low as many predict. It's a tough one, this. It really genuinely is, and I'm really struggling to be conclusive. I suppose if there's one thing I want to get across in this video, it's that Depp isn't as innocent as you think. This doesn't mean I don't think the verdict was just, as the American judicial system, all things considered, is pretty great. And it's also important to remember that Heard didn't completely lose either. They both won. Depp just won more. Neither of these two celebrities are representative of their respective genders, so let's stop viewing this as a war between men and women, or victims and abusers. This is simply John C. Depp II v. Amber Laura Heard. At the end of the day, this is all just my opinion, and I'm sure that considering how long I've been talking for, I've said a few things that you may disagree with. Despite all the research I've done, perhaps I did get a few things wrong, but I hope I've been tactful and respectful enough to not elicit a hateful reaction of any kind. So be sure to inform me of anything you know that I might not, especially if you think it will greatly change any opinions from this video. A subscription to the channel would also be very much appreciated, and I can promise you that my content isn't usually this long. I wasn't trying to make this video so long, but the research just kept piling up and it sort of just turned out that way. Anyway, it's a great relief to finally have it out now. Much love to you all, I'll catch you later.